Today's episode is for all the fixers out there, and I feel like it's only honest if I start off with a confession. I am a recovering fixer. For as long as I can remember, I've been that guy who helps people with their problems. I've been told I'm a good listener, that I'm in tune with my emotions, that I have a pretty good intuition for relationships, and it's not uncommon for me to pick up the phone at like 2 a.m. for a friend who's trying to get a hold of me, needs somebody to talk to. I'm the guy who stands up in the middle of dinner and runs out the door to go help a neighbor move their couch, and I've probably walked hundreds of miles pacing back and forth talking on the phone to a friend who needed a shoulder to cry on or somebody to talk to in a moment of need. One of my favorite memories from college was when I wrote for the school newspaper. I had a relationship advice column, and I had written this article that I was really proud of. And one day when I was walking to class, a girl walked up to me and just gave me a hug. I'd never met this girl in my life. She said, "Are you Nate Bagley?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "That article you wrote last week in the school paper meant so much to me. I cut it out and I hung it up on my bathroom mirror so I could read it every morning as I get ready for the day." Suffice it to say that I wore that title of fixer like a badge of honor for a very long time in my life. I saw myself as being selfless and helpful and even a little heroic as I helped save people from the woes of their relationships and their life. But I had no idea how destructive being a fixer was to my relationships. So today I want to talk about 4 specific negative impacts being a fixer has on your relationship. And I'm going to give you my favorite tip that I use to help me from going into fix-it mode and causing all the problems that I'm about to describe to you. The first problem that comes with being a fixer that we don't talk about enough is that it makes you really bad at dealing with your own anxiety. When your partner comes to you with a problem that they're dealing with, sitting there with them in the problem can cause a little bit of stress, a little bit of tension, and make you feel anxious. And as a fixer, I didn't like that. All I wanted my partner to do was change their behavior so that the problem would go away and I didn't have to sit in that discomfort anymore. A great example of this was I was dating a girl who really dealt with a lot of anxiety. And I don't think I really spent that much time sitting down and getting curious, learning where that anxiety came from, learning how long it had been there, learning what she did in the past to deal with that anxiety, learning if I was part of the anxiety. I didn't ask any of those questions. As a fixer, all I did was go out, research anxiety, and collect all of the tools and tips to manage the anxiety, and then tried to force her to implement them. I was like, okay, here's the list of things that you need to do to manage your anxiety. You need to have a consistent sleep schedule. You need to eat healthy foods. You need to exercise regularly so you have an outlet. And so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to make sure that you go to bed every night at a good time. And then 8 hours later, after a good solid night's sleep, I'm going to show up at your door at 6 a.m. and we're going to work out together and get our blood pumping, start our day off right. And then while you get ready to go for the day, I'm going to go make you a healthy breakfast. And that way you'll have some good nutrition. And then I'll go about my day and you'll go about your day and we'll start the whole thing over the next day. Essentially what I was saying is I need you to change all of your behaviors. As a matter of fact, I'm going to help you change your behavior so that I can feel more calm. You see, when a fixer gets anxious, what they try to do is manipulate and control the people around them so that they can feel better. So if you come to me with a problem and sitting in that problem makes me feel uncomfortable, then my way of getting that discomfort to go away is to try to get you to change your behavior so that the problem goes away, so that I don't have to sit and be anxious listening to your problems anymore. For many people, fixing is actually a way of controlling other people's behaviors so that you can feel more peace of mind and less anxiety. On the other side of that coin, fixing also tends to make you more anxious. There's a YouTube video that went popular several years ago called "It's Not About the Nail." And this woman is sitting on the couch talking to her husband, and she's got this nail in her forehead. And she's like, "I just feel this pressure. There's just this constant nagging pain." And all he wants to do is for her to take the nail out of her head. And watching that video made me so anxious. Here I am looking at this couple arguing, and I'm thinking, there's an obvious solution, lady. Take the nail out of your head. And the longer the video goes without her taking the nail out of her head, the more anxious I get. You see, when you're a fixer and you have all the solutions to people's problems, and you give them advice, you give them guidance, and then they go out and continue to screw up their lives over and over and over again without making corrections to their behavior, it can be really, really frustrating. It can be the source of resentment and frustration and anxiety, and it can damage your relationships permanently. So now we've talked about the anxiety piece of being a fixer. I want to move on and talk about the second point, which is that being a fixer sucks up your time and your mental, emotional, and physical energy. Part of being in a healthy, happy, fulfilling relationship is that you need to take responsibility for your own well-being. And a common theme for many fixers is that they see themselves as being very selfless. They're willing to bend over backwards to help others, even if it's at the expense of their own needs or desires. For the first 2, maybe 3 decades of my life, I don't think I could say the word no to somebody who needed help. If I was exhausted, if I was in the middle of another important project, if I had something going on, but somebody else needed help, I would still just drop everything and say yes and bend over backwards to take care of them. And I got to tell you, a lot of the time, it left me feeling exhausted. Mentally, emotionally, physically, there were times where I gave beyond my capacity to give. So being a fixer can be dangerous if you aren't able to set boundaries, if you can't say no, and if you're not very good at practicing self-care. It can consume your life and your relationships and leave you feeling overly busy and stressed out and anxious and exhausted all the time. The third problem with being a fixer is that it teaches other people to become dependent on you. I see this happen a lot in marriage, where one person is a higher functioning person. They're a get stuff done kind of person. They get a checklist in order and they go through that checklist and get everything taken care of. And whenever their partner comes to them with a problem, they're there to fix it. They've got a solution, a tactic, a strategy, a book, a podcast. They've got all the answers. Now, the great thing about this is it can be really helpful to have that kind of a person around. But the really damaging part is you can teach the people in your life to become dependent on you to be their problem solver. They stop taking initiative. They rely on you to take care of anything that's hard. And at first that feels really nice. You feel like everybody's depending on you. You're the linchpin of the family. This is a really fulfilling role to have. But when people start taking you for granted, when they stop appreciating the little things that you do to solve their problems and make their life better, you build up a lot of resentment and you start to get really frustrated. You start to ask yourself questions like, why am I the one who pulls all the weight here? Doesn't anybody else care about our relationships? Why do they just take me for granted all the time? We call this type of person who's always there to solve everybody else's problems an enabler. And enablers create relationships where other people are dependent on them. Now, there's a difference between being dependent and interdependent. Interdependent means you work as a team, you fill in each other's gaps, and the two of you together can accomplish more than one of you by themselves. But when somebody's dependent on you, it's like they're a giant vacuum that just sucks the time, the energy, the life force out of you all the time. And being in a relationship where you're the enabler and you're stuck with somebody who's constantly dependent on you to take care of every problem that arises, you're going to get burned out and the relationship doesn't really have legs. So all you fixers out there, you got to be very careful that you're not training the people around you to be dependent on you, because that's no fun. The fourth way that being a fixer does damage to your relationships is that it gives you a bit of a hero complex. Now, I'll be the first to admit that it feels really good to save people from their pain. When you can swoop in like the knight in shining armor and slay their dragons for them, rescue the damsel in distress, man, that feels really, really good. But the problem is that if you enjoy that feeling a little too much, then you only pursue relationships with people who constantly need help. Being the hero starts to become your identity. You're constantly looking for problems to solve and people to help. And if you're not careful, you can find yourself in relationship with all sorts of friends and family members and even a partner who are chronically in trouble. They're always caught in the middle of a dramatic situation, and there's not going to be space for an actual relationship. Your relationship will be defined by your savior complex. And the really sad part about this is that when these people solve their problems or they get better at managing their problems themselves, they leave. They don't need you anymore. So they move on to a more healthy relationship, and you're left to seek out another wounded person who needs help and needs fixing. And this cycle just repeats itself over and over. These are just some of the reasons why being a fixer can do damage to your relationships. And I had no idea. So I'm hoping if you're a fixer, this has made a little light bulb go on for you and help you realize that maybe this mentality, this identity that you have of being the person who solves all the problems isn't necessarily a good thing. So I'm going to give you one specific tip now that will help you keep from slipping into that fixer mentality. And I want to start by telling you a story. A while back, my wife was pregnant with our baby, and she was very, very nauseous in her first trimester. And it wasn't uncommon for her to run to the bathroom several times a day to toss her cookies. My heart was just breaking because I couldn't think of anything that I could do in that situation to help. And don't get me wrong, I tried. There were times where my wife would wake up in the morning and she would run to the toilet, and I would say things like, "Hey, did you take your anti-nausea medication?" That's not helpful. I would say, "Hey, did you get some food in your stomach early in the morning? I know that typically helps you keep the nausea at bay." That also wasn't helpful. Literally no amount of problem solving while somebody is throwing up in a toilet is going to help them feel better. The only thing I could do in that situation is rub her back, hold her hair in a ponytail, and just say, "I'm so sorry. This really sucks. Did you get it all out? Is there any more left in there?" And then eventually, when my wife had purged whatever she needed to purge, she felt a little bit better. We could stand up. I could get her a cold cloth, lay her down, get her something to drink, and she was okay for a little while. It didn't take me very long to realize that there is a parallel here. Sometimes when my wife would come to me with her problems, maybe she was having a disagreement with one of her sisters, or maybe somebody at work was really rude to her, and she would come home and she would just have all of this stuff in her that needed to come out. And the moments where these conversations went the best were always the moments where I treated her as if she was vomiting when she was pregnant. I put my hand on her back and I'd say, "I'm so sorry, honey. This really sucks." I would let her talk and just get everything out. And I had this mental visual that helped me remember what to do. I would hold the metaphorical garbage can for her while she just word vomited into the bin. And as things would start to slow down, I'd lean over and say, "Is there anything else? Is there anything else you need to get out?" And she'd, start up with a whole new topic. And what I found after I held that metaphorical garbage can for my wife is that at the end of that conversation, my wife was feeling a lot better, and I had not slipped into my fix-it mentality. I hadn't gone into problem-solving mode. All she really needed was to just get stuff out to feel better. So here's my invitation to all you fixers out there. Next time somebody comes to you with a problem, instead of going into fix-it mode, bust out your metaphorical garbage can and hold that emotional garbage can for the person who's coming to you with a problem, and see what happens when they have a chance to just unload everything that's weighing them down. You can sit next to them, you can rub them on the back, treat them as if they're literally physically vomiting, and see if at the end of that conversation they don't feel better. My guess is that 9 times out of 10, your partner or the person that you love doesn't need you to solve their problems. They just need you to hold the garbage can for them. That is a tip that has helped me get out of my fix-it mindset and be a much better listener. It's opened up many opportunities for my wife and I to connect on a more intimate level, and it's saved me from all of these problems that I listed earlier on in this episode. I'm less resentful, I'm less exhausted, I don't derive my sense of self, my value, from being able to solve other people's problems. These are all amazing side effects of me learning to just not be a fixer all the time. So there you go. If you found this helpful, I would love to hear from you down below. Just leave a comment. And if you want more tips like this, make sure that you subscribe to the show. Have a great day, and I'll see you next week.